So if you've been following Dashing Dish for any length of time, you probably know that I have a past with eating disorders. And that was in my teenage years, but it's been a while since I've done any kind of update on how I feel now about body image, food, fitness, all of the things. And now that I'm turning 40 in 1 month, I thought it would be a great time to share the things I learned primarily in my 30s as it pertains to taking care of my body and the freedom that I found in my 30s. So real quick, just as a review of my past, really in my teen years, I walked through anorexia, bulimia, really heavy eating disorders, and it lasted from the age I was 14 till about the age I was 20 years old. When I turned 20, I started going into nursing school, and during that time, I really started to seek God and look to be truly transformed by the renewing of my mind, because I knew that although I had stopped the behaviors of eating disorders, such as purging, binging, all of that, I still had so much in my mind and in the way that I was even physically treating my body that had to be renewed and changed. So I started to carry my Bible with me everywhere on campus. Between classes, I would just soak up God's word. And I knew that that's where true freedom was found. And truly, that was how my heart and my mind began to heal. And I also had a desire to learn how to fuel my body the way that God originally intended. So instead of being afraid of food, I wanted to learn how to properly fuel my body. So I started to read books and articles and get into the research-based articles on the computer at nursing school and learn about nutrition. And so that was where my love for nutrition started to birth. And I also got into the kitchen and started to kind of experiment with recipes. So I would take foods that I used to love as a kid, and I started to learn, how can I make this in a way that's really fueling and nourishing to my body, and really began to focus on that instead of, again, being afraid of food. So then in my mid-20s, I started Dashing Dish, and that was where Dashing Dish kind of began, was in my own quest for finding freedom from obsessive behaviors and thoughts and mindsets around my body and food. I wanted to share what God was teaching me, and so I did through Dashing Dish. And over the years, I have learned so much more since starting Dashing Dish, just through my own journey and walk. And I would say that the biggest piece has been surrender and continual surrendering to God, because if it was up to me, I would always have everything under control, and I would control things very tightly. That is my personality, and I like to have things under my control. But the more that I have surrendered to God and allowed Him to show me the better way, the more freedom that I truly have found. So that brought me to my 30s, which is the decade that I had 2 children, a cross-country move. Sean started a new business. We bought a new home and moved cross-country. So much change happened, and that was where the true tests were when it came to surrendering everything to God, because, again, I have a tendency to control things, and a lot of that felt very out of control for me. And so instead of me going back to my old behaviors or tendencies, I had to continually choose to submit and surrender my will and my desires and my control to the Lord. So a big part of control release for me in my 30s was letting go of tracking my food, tracking macros. I did that all through my 20s, and I made a lot of reasonings and excuses, so to speak, of why I thought that that was still okay and still healthy. But now looking back, I just see that it was just another area of control, because I never listened to my body. And it wasn't until I saw Maddie growing up, probably like toddler years on, that I started to realize how disordered that really was, because I would watch her eat food and start and stop when she was hungry, and when she was full, she'd stop. And I just thought, wow, that's so amazing. I wish I could do that. But instead, I had to track everything on my phone of what I was eating, and I never allowed myself to eat beyond what was in my macros. And then the problem with that was I would binge if I had a day that I was free of tracking macros, because I knew that it was the only chance to be able to eat whatever I want. So for me, that was a very controlling behavior. So that was something that I let go in my 30s. Another thing is I let go of exercising to control my weight in my 30s. I have truly come to a place where exercise is a way of taking care of my body, keeping me healthy, keeping me strong for the longevity of my life rather than trying to control my body and how it looks. And for all of my 20s, exercise was always about how I looked. I pushed my body 110% all the time, 6 days a week usually. And it was always in an effort to control and keep my body small. Another huge change in my 30s when it came to food was I finally allowed myself to eat real food. As crazy as that sounds, I spent so much of my 20s trying to eat what is considered now, in my mind, diet food. So things that were very low calorie, even if they weren't the healthiest ingredients. And I knew that, I still tried to make everything sugar-free, low calorie, low fat, and eat as low calorie as possible because I was always tracking my calories. And so everything was about calories. You know, my world revolved around that. I knew just by looking at a plate of food how many calories I was eating. And again, I would never listen to my body. I would always just focus on the calories. And lastly, a huge part of what's changed in my 30s that's brought me so much freedom is rest. So resting in the natural ways, such as, you know, taking a day off of exercise, taking a walk instead of doing a high intensity workout, taking a moment just to sit down in my busy day, but also rest as it pertains to my stress and my mental health. So just bringing myself back to a place where I'm keeping my mind stayed upon the Lord. I'm keeping peaceful worship on throughout the day. I'm just allowing my mind and my heart to rest in the Lord and what He's provided and done for me. And ultimately, I would say the biggest piece of freedom for me has been not only letting go of control and surrendering everything to God, but also realizing that my worth and my identity truly is found in Him. And, you know, I might have said that in my 20s, but I don't know that I really believed it until now. Now, it doesn't matter what I weigh. It doesn't matter what my body looks like. It doesn't matter what food I'm eating, how I'm exercising. I have such peace, such fulfillment, such joy in the Lord that I've never had before. And I think that only comes just by time spent with Him and just being in His presence and allowing Him to establish your identity and just root you in who He is. And as my roots have gone down deep in Him, I have felt truly satisfied. And so that is my prayer. That is my hope for every woman listening to this, that you find this place of contentment, this place of identity, joy, and peace that can only be found in Jesus Christ.